observed, Mr. Franklin. I'm not going to read this. That'll take even more of the 10 minutes that I have. My co-author is not here today. He's teaching on teaching assignment in Guyana, so I'm carrying the mantle. And we're just looking at diversification and development challenges, given these two great data sets that we've been working on at the business school. Basically, I'm going to say a few words real fast about the Global Competitiveness Report, about the GEM study, and then look at some of the insights that actually dovetail and feed right into what the speakers were saying this morning. We have a lot of data here to support the hypotheses and the beliefs that were presented earlier today. The GCR is produced by the World Economic Forum. Basically, in a nutshell, what they do is they assemble some hard data from multilateral agencies, and they support that with interviews of at least 150 people drawn from industry and academia and other non-government bodies, and then they construct their report based on that. The idea behind, or the philosophy of this work is contained in these sentences. It is firms that compete, not countries. So if you have a country with very competitive firms in a particular sector, that country will be competitive in that sector. Looking at the succession of global competitiveness reports over the years, we see a disturbing trend. The blue figure is our rank, and today we can proudly say that we're the 94th most competitive nation out of 138. We should be in a different place on this list. I've just highlighted here some areas of particular concern. I should say I am the lead researcher on the GEM project, and my colleague, Dr. Kisto, is the lead researcher on the GCR. We have serious deficiencies in our institutions, and we heard that resonating this morning. Several people remarked on many other problems that we have that could be linked to weaknesses in institutions, and I'll go on to speak more to that in a while. The macroeconomic environment is more about macroeconomic things over which we have some control. So the falling performance here has more to do with our deficits and the variables that are under policy control. We have bottlenecks and issues in goods markets. We have issues in labor markets or factor markets. And some of the slides that I have coming on, I'm going to speak in some detail about innovation. So this just gives you a kind of snapshot, really, of some key variables that have affected our competitiveness and put us so close to the bottom of the ranking of countries by competitiveness. This is a slide. I really will not have the time to go through this. I would have wanted to. But this gives us some key issues that deal with our weaknesses or our deficiencies in our institutions. And when you see things like this, having such a low score, these are scores out of 7, with the 118th country with the lowest position on this. Issues like this, these are things that we should be able to fix. These are not the things that have come down from us from the sky. I'll come back to GCR just to give you an overview of what GEM is. GEM is the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor. It is the biggest study of entrepreneurship in the world. It's a not-for-profit consortium that is operated by universities in over 70 countries. We have a unique data set. It's a longitudinal data set. We interview a minimum of 2,000 adults each year, and a rotating panel of 36 experts drawn from industry, academia, government, and so on and so forth. So just as, again, a very quick overview of the key findings of GEM, as far as entrepreneurial perceptions, aspirations, and so on go, we're ahead of the game. We are much better off than the Latin America average and the world average on every key dimension that would go towards creating an active, buoyant, competitive SME sector. In terms of performance, the key variable, the key measure in GEM is the total early stage entrepreneurship measure. We're below the regional average for the first time in the latest study, but we're still above the global average of 13%. This figure here is excellent. This means that 2/3 of the people who go into entrepreneurship in Trinidad do so out of a desire to do something even better than what they would have been doing had they not done this. In other words, what this does is it separates people who are forced into self-employment through poverty or unemployment and picks up people who have another option but choose to be self-employed. The GEM looks at the performance of the entrepreneurial sector on these 3 dimensions. The belief is if we could create a set of firms that have these characteristics, this sector can actually be a great avenue for diversification of the economy. So one question we ask is, okay, how are we doing on these 3 dimensions? Here are the first 2. Our entrepreneurial firms tend not to create jobs, and because of the very nature of what these firms do. Our entrepreneurial firms tend not to sell overseas, again, because of the nature of the kinds of organizations that they have. When we look at Latin America on these dimensions, the picture is totally different. Thank you. Is that 5 or 15? 5, okay, good. When we look at performance in terms of innovation, things are also equally dismal. In fact, virtually all of the entrepreneurial firms don't use any new technology and don't offer anything new to customers. This is all replicative business. It's a far cry from a sector that is producing innovative, export competitive, high growth enterprises. And the same goes for both brand new firms and for established SME or entrepreneurial firms. So this sector is not living up to that potential, to that vision of being the vehicle for diversification. Well, just expanding a bit on innovation, let's see what the Global Competitive Index or Global Competitive Report says about innovation. And we see here again, remember these are all out of 138 countries. We're like almost at the bottom on company spending. There are sub-Saharan countries in Africa that spend more on company R&D than we do here. Collaboration between academia and industry, again, is a particularly weak area, and so on. And what is also disturbing is the downward trend. These little graphs here are line graphs that give us the trend over the last 5 years. We're not heading in the right direction here. R&D transfer is another dimension of bringing what goes on in academia, transferring that across the industry. And we see when my colleagues separated the interview data from academics and industry people, what do we see? Both sides are blaming each other. The researchers are saying, oh, the business people are not interested in using the latest technology. All they want to do is import stuff and sell it. And the academics are saying, oh, the industry people are not interested in what we do. They're just, there is a role for some kind of dialogue, some kind of mediator here. GEM also finds identically the same thing, the same bottlenecks that we see in the GCR, we see in GEM, a transfer of technology, and that's about people. This again is not a problem that has fallen in our lap. This is something that we can fix. If after all that we still have an idea, or we still have a product that could make it into a final stage of production and marketing, we then have to face challenges in the goods markets that have been identified by both, and I don't have the time to go into this. If I do, I wouldn't be able to speak on. 2 minutes, good. This is a slide that actually was in Hayden Blade's presentation earlier. Again, the number one problem that businesses complain about in the GCR, year after year after year, is this issue of poor work ethic in the labor force. And guess what's number two? The same things that we saw at the beginning. So moving to the education system, the links between the education system and diversification and development are quite straightforward. We know that it does this, we know that it does that, we know that it does this, and there are also some latent or some other things that education brings to economic development in the form of shaping culture and so on and so forth. So we look at education through these two research bodies, and we see that, look at this here, in terms of the education figures, we're not bad. We're in the 30s and 50s, versus before, when we were we were like 100 and something in the rankings of various countries. And indeed, GEM data also supports that at the tertiary level, we are in a good place with giving people entrepreneurial skills and so on and so forth. At the primary and secondary level, not so much. This is a problem. This is a problem. Historically, we've been running the GEM research now since 2010. And for a very long time, this was the highest age group of self-employed people, the 25 to 34 age group. This cycle, for the first time, the biggest age group is now 35 to 44. The mean age of the entrepreneur in Trinidad is rising. More importantly, usually tertiary education accounts for more than a quarter. This is the highest level of education of the entrepreneur. Again, for the first time, this is now down to 24%, it's less than a quarter. So the self-employed person in Trinidad and Tobago is getting older and less educated. That's something to worry about. That has implications, and we need more data to understand this phenomenon. One potential explanation could be that the OJT program is diverting people, university-educated people who may have opened their own business, into other activities. I've had 3 OJT research assistants. These people are awesome. I can't believe that these people were not able to get a job or do something in their own business. But the allure of that guaranteed income for 2 years seems to be a very powerful thing. I'll skip this slide. I'm out of time. Just want to say a couple things about my conclusions. One issue that comes up in both reports is this thing of national culture. And we heard this today. Both reports say that we have a low capacity to innovate. Do we really have a low capacity to innovate? I always say, there's a country, we could put cocaine in a tin and seal it and export it. I would challenge people in the engineering faculty here to build something in secret, like I saw on TV in sea lots, to ship and sell illegal diesel to boats in the Gulf of Paria. I mean, look at Carnival, look at Parang, you name it, we could do it. Our problem, we have problems in innovation, but they're not obvious. We have the creativity, we have technical skill. Where do we fall down? The anthropologists tell us that our problem is one of low uncertainty avoidance. And this is discussed in the GEM report if you're interested in reading it. This low uncertainty avoidance, or this high tolerance for ambiguity, makes us great at creative things, but it makes us really bad at the discipline of actually implementing something, of actually doing something. That drive, and you need both to become innovative. Our recommendations coming out of this are quite straightforward. One is to recognize the issue of the low-hanging fruit that we also heard this morning, and create policies to deal with that. The fact is that if we are to diversify this economy using that sector, we need to recognize the distractions, the challenges of rent-seeking, of the profit that is possible through opening a restaurant or a supermarket or some other replicative business. You'd be a really foolish person to risk your mortgage and your family's fortune in pursuit of something that you have invented if your next best option is to open a pretty safe retail establishment. Now, it's a no-brainer. So we need to recognize that and put things in place to encourage SME or entrepreneurial firms that will specifically lead to that vision of diversification. Look at the issue of the profile of the entrepreneur that we saw a little while ago. And then, use institutions to harness the creativity and that flair of the people and divert that away from putting cocaine in a tin and diesel out into the Gulf into inventing something, into creating that steel pan that we heard about, that somebody in Japan is probably going to open a factory and one day export back to us in Trinidad. So I know I'm out of time. Thank you for your patience.